Good morning, guys. It is the morning of November 15th, and my friend and I are going to be heading to Capital Audiofest very soon. I've gone for the last few years. I missed it last year, but the last couple of years before that, I think I've gone every year for at least a day, and I'm really excited to get back to it this year. I'm going with my friend, who I took to a Head-Fi meet earlier in the year, and she really enjoyed it and agreed to come along with me to help shoot this video, so I'm really grateful to her. And I'm excited to listen to some speakers and check out the headphone lounge as usual. So when we pick back up, I will see you there. Okay, after a very frustrating time parking, we are finally heading into the hotel, and I will see you all momentarily as we get to listening to some speakers. Hey guys, we just got done listening to the Grimm Audio LS1E. All in all, I really enjoyed it. I did feel like the room suffered from something that a lot of audiophile showrooms tend to suffer from, which is that the music that the salespeople want to present to you is very sparsely instrumented and very female vocal forward, which I honestly didn't feel like these speakers really benefited from. I did feel like they were a little hot in the upper mid-range. I couldn't tell if that was because of the track or the speaker, because I did feel like when I listened to my music on these speakers, they sounded a lot better. We listened to 45 by Shinedown, which I felt like really showcased the upper treble extension and the sub-bass reach. It dug really far down. I'm very impressed by that. Also listened to one of my perennial test tracks for music in general, whether I'm listening to headphones, IEMs, DAC amps, etc., which is Time by Hans Zimmer. I could notice subtle gradations in the opening percussion of the track, which is very difficult to hear, very difficult to pick out, and it rendered it absolutely perfectly. It was really impressive, but I really feel like I didn't get to listen to as much music in that room as I really would have liked to, just because there was a lot of, recurrent sales pitch. The guy has to talk to you about the speakers and why they're special. And I appreciated that the sales pitch was very grounded and instrument focused, but I wish that we had gotten more time to actually listen to music in the room. So we're going to move on to the SVS speakers room now, and I will talk to you momentarily. Hey folks, we just got done in the SVS room. Honestly, it was a breath of fresh air just walking into the room and hearing music that actually had instruments in it. I also appreciated the lines from the sales rep that you were going to hear music in this room that you're not going to hear in these other rooms, then you're not going to hear the same 20 songs that you hear in every other room. In that room, they were really good about taking requests and really good about, taking a chance in terms of having a lot of confidence in their speakers to handle music that you're generally just not going to hear in these other showrooms. So I really appreciated that. We listened to 45 by Shinedown again. My friend is really into that song at the moment, so I wanted to give her a chance to actually hear it all the way through. I really appreciated that the upper mid-range didn't seem to be quite as hot as the LS1E did, but it didn't seem to have the same upper treble or sub-bass extension as the LS1E. The LS1E did have the benefit of having two subs, one on each speaker, so that probably has something to do with it. But I really liked the way that acoustic guitar sounded on the SVS Ultra Evolution, which comes in at $5,000 for a pair of speakers. I also thought that even if they didn't have quite the same upper treble extension, cymbal crashes and treble transient delivery was really crispy, really well defined. So all in all, a really positive experience, and I'll definitely be checking out the SVS Ultra Evolution if I'm in the market for a speaker in that price range. Hey folks, we just got done with a GoldenEar room. We listened to the GoldenEar T44, which is a tower speaker that comes at about $5,000 a pair. Honestly, this was my least favorite so far. It was kind of initially deceiving because when we walked in the room, we were playing something with relatively minimal instrumentation. Not no instrumentation, but minimal instrumentation. And it really sounded super detailed, super clean. The transient delivery was really snappy and detailed. It's an active plus passive design, so a hybrid design. Basically, the woofer is powered, and then the tweeter, which is an AMT tweeter, is powered through an external amplifier. Initially, again, I thought it was a very detailed sounding speaker. There was a lot of texture to female vocals without it being sibilant. But what happened was, as we started getting into music with a lot more bass, and specifically a lot more sub-bass, I felt like there was, even if the bass went down pretty deep, it didn't sound very controlled. It was very rumbly, very grumbly, a lot of vibration, and just didn't sound controlled at all. And I also felt like the more instrumentation got added into the music, the less controlled and coherent the speaker sounded overall. So honestly, not my favorite, and they had a lot of Audiofest cables in there, and Audiofest is pure snake oil anyway, so that's another mark against them. And then we just went to check out Orchard Audio, but they were more demonstrating a home theater style setup. They had a movie playing in there, and that's really not my focus for this trip, so we're gonna skip that for now. We might double back later, but we're probably gonna check out Geshelli Audio next. I've met them before. I met them when I was here 2 years ago. I had a nice conversation with them. So we're gonna head there next, so see you there. Hey folks, we just got done in the Geshelli audio rooms. There were 2 rooms. One was more headphone focused. I tried out a stack of their Archel 3 Pro, Arish 3 Pro, and the J3 Pro. I assume that was a DAC, an amp, and something else. I don't know which one it was. It's worth stating at this point that I do my DAC amp evaluations as comparisons and not standalone. I usually compare my DAC amps to a DAC amp that I know well and well controlled, low noise conditions, which obviously a showroom is not going to be that. So I can't really comment as to the individual characteristics as far as sound quality of the Geshelli components. We did listen to the Folk House Stelia, which actually seemed to have a little bit of channel imbalance, so that was a little disappointing. I also listened to an Abyss headphone of unknown provenance and make. I don't know Abyss headphones very well, but I didn't like it. It was very bright. The treble was pretty harsh. So I didn't listen to that very long either. We then moved on to the speaker room, where they had several different components. They had a DAC called the Torque, a preamp called the Giuseppe, and 2 mono blocks called the Z blocks, in combination with a pair of acoustic energy tower speakers. I liked the speakers overall. They had very crisp treble, but I did feel like they were a little bit hot in the lower treble. Transient delivery was very crisp, very snappy, pretty effortless, which may be a result of the speakers, may be a result of the components, or a combination of the two. I did feel like they were lacking presence and extension in the sub-bass. The bass that was there was mostly mid-bass focused, but I also really enjoyed songs with female vocals on that pair of speakers. I felt like they did a great job of bringing detail and texture to female vocals and making them vibrant without introducing sibilants. So, not sure where we're going to go next. I need to consult my guidebook for the day, but we'll see you wherever we end up next. Alright, so we just left the Devialet room, and I was not impressed. They had a pair of tower speakers in there from YG Acoustics, the Carmel 3, which retail for, I believe, $30,000 a pair, and they were not good. They were really hot in the treble and the upper mid-range, and it was, I suspect they're one of those speakers that you have to have some degree of hearing loss to appreciate, because it was really, really harsh. I had a hard time staying in that room to continue listening to come with any kind of impressions, because it was not a good experience. And I do not recommend anyone who has any degree of hearing above 12 kilohertz to purchase those speakers at any price. So we're gonna move on to the 8th floor and check out some other rooms, and we'll keep going. So hopefully the next room sounds better. Hey folks, we're getting back to you a little later in the day. I did want to update you that the best room of the day so far was the Anthem and Paradigm room. They had a 7.4.1 system that retailed for about $60,000, and it sounded like it cost that much, and I don't say that lightly. When we walked in, they were doing a live concert performance of Muse, which I thought was a pretty bold choice, and it just sounded absolutely massive while still sounding absolutely neutral. It was just a wall of sound coming at you, and it sounded great. Really impressed, and the only nitpick that I had, I think, at all was maybe the lower treble was just a little bit hot, but honestly, it was really hard to even take time to, make my notes for that room because I was just enjoying listening to the music so much. I could have sat there for the entire concert, it felt like. We also stopped by the Linsoul booth. I chatted with James for a little bit, which was pretty cool. But I got the chance to listen to a couple of Ziigaat IEMs for the first time, which was pretty interesting because I haven't heard anything by that brand before. So it was nice to have that opportunity. I listened to the Horizon, which honestly I thought was pretty overpriced given the level of technical performance that was on display. I just felt like the treble performance wasn't there in terms of extension and detail retrieval. And the bass was growly in the sub bass, but kind of woolly sounding in the mid bass. I thought the vocal presentation was generally fine. It's very much in line with new meta style tunings. So vocal presentations was fine, but I just didn't think the end-to-end extension was that great. I also listened to the Ziigaat Estrella, which I thought was a little better than the Horizon in terms of technical performance, but I still felt like it was a little bit overpriced in terms of the level of technical performance on display. There was more sub-bass especially, and there was a little bit more contrast and separation in terms of end-to-end extension, but it just didn't seem like it was worthy of what I believe is around a $300 IEM, especially compared to some of the other things that I've heard. Next up was the Kiwi Ears Punch, which I thought had some of the deepest, hardest-hitting bass that I've heard to date. I thought it was a really, really great bass head IEM. Probably one of the best bass head IEMs that I've heard to date, because even though the male vocals did sound a little bit muffled, it wasn't too bad. There was still enough vocal clarity to make vocal-focused music enjoyable while still giving you that deep, hard-hitting bass. And then, of course, I listened to the Punch Martillo, which I believe is basically just a better version of the Kiwi Ears Punch. Specifically in the treble performance, it had much better treble extension, much better detail retrieval, and I believe is absolutely worth the $500-ish price tag. Highly recommend. I would love to get my hands on one for review at some point, but if that doesn't happen, I'm very glad that I got the opportunity to hear it here today. Hey folks, we're coming to the end of the day here, and do you ever walk into a room at an audiophile show and just know you're not going to enjoy the speakers? Well, I just had that experience walking into the room for Bricasti Design. Kind of hardware that they had was just a kind of overbuilt, oversized hardware in terms of source components and amplification that just screams old men with too much disposable income. And I didn't enjoy the music in that room at all. It was, lightly instrumented orchestral music that told me basically nothing about the capabilities of the speakers, and then they put on some stereotypical audiophile female vocal heavy track that the female vocals were just completely overjuiced, overdone, too vibrant, sibilant, just too much, and it's so typical of so-called audiophile speakers, and it's probably my biggest, red flag in terms of the performance of the speakers, whether it just overjuices female vocals, and those definitely did. Anyway, I think we're going to head home after this. I really enjoyed my time here today, enjoyed being with my friend, talking to James at Linsoul, hearing all these great speakers and some not-so-great speakers, and hopefully we'll do this again at Can Jam New York early next year. Until next time, this is Better Off Reviews, signing off.